Meet Gregor Robertson, who was just handpicked by Mark Carney to run for the Liberals in Vancouver Fraserview South Burnaby. As mayor of Vancouver, Robertson supported the decriminalization of drugs and oversaw a 600% rise in overdoses in his city. He then called to outsource this disaster to the entire province, claiming it would be life-saving. When the province gave in to Robertson's demands, nearly 5,000 people died of overdoses across BC over the next 2 years. But helping more people die of drug overdoses isn't Robertson's only accomplishment. When he entered office, the average home price in Vancouver was a little over $800,000. By the time he left, it was over $2.3 million. When he entered office, the average apartment in Vancouver rented for less than $1,000 a month. By the time he left, it was approaching $1,400. And under his watch, Vancouver turned into a global hub for organized crime and money laundering. With this record of failure, it's no wonder that Mark Carney wants to give him a promotion to the federal level. It's up to Canadians to say no.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't look like very many good things happened under his watch in Vancouver. And David Cochran, who I give a very hard time, tries to be a journalist. Once or twice in this, he asks real questions to a guy like this. Somebody must have slipped him a note mid-interview though, saying, ask easy questions or we're gonna fire your bald ass. Like, it's pathetic the way this goes. Gregor Robertson, let's check him out.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
There are a number of newly elected MPs that have been given roles in Prime Minister Mark Carney's new ministry. These new MPs come from different backgrounds, from former mayors to a Bay Street businessman to a former chief of staff. Now, they'll help the Prime Minister fulfill his ambitious agenda and deliver change to Canadians. And while most of these new faces have been given cabinet minister positions, these 4 MPs have been given Secretary of State roles. Now, my next guest is one of those newly elected cabinet ministers. Gregor Robertson is the new Minister of Housing and Infrastructure and former Mayor of Vancouver. Minister Robertson, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming in today, sir.
Great to be with you.
One of the new faces in a cabinet that the Prime Minister says is all about change. Mm-hmm. You've been handed housing. If there is a sector that needs real change, it is housing. How do you plan to tackle this?
Well, certainly building off the more recent success in the last few years with Housing Accelerator Fund and the partnerships between the federal government and cities, which is what I know from working in Vancouver. Those partnerships are critical. Obviously, the funding is really critical to come from the federal level. And I think the Prime Minister's commitment around doubling our construction, basically getting the supply up into the bracket where we can build faster, greener, we can build more affordably and make sure that we're filling in the supply that has been frankly lacking across Canada for decades now. We've lost a generation here, going back many governments, and I think the pace is quickened, but we've got to double down and go to the next level.
How do you credibly and quickly do that when things like zoning are still under provincial control? You know, development fees are still under, municipal control, not provincial control. Right. You're putting a cap on immigration. There is still labor shortages in construction and in home building. Mm-hmm. I know the shift to modular, but that's going to take time to tool up and to build those supply lines. So how quickly do you deliver real growth in supply here? Yeah,
well, I think you pointed it out right off the top there was around working with municipalities. You got to have cities, communities at the table. You got to have provinces have a lot of the levers involved too. And this is where I think this rare opportunity where Team Canada and the really critical steps that we got to take as a country to reboot our economy in light of the attacks and the tariffs from the States. Housing, building, and construction, biggest industry in the world if you set aside the financial industry, but this is the biggest industry across Canada that we can really mobilize. We need to have all levels of government at the table, really removing, as we're talking about interprovincial barriers, removing the barriers to building faster and more affordably. And so that's partnership that has to be kind of restarted. I think the Prime Minister has put that as a key priority for him in that Team Canada context. We've got to get that to the ground level and making sure we're delivering the incentives, the partnerships, we're making sure that we're giving and driving the pace with local governments and obviously the provinces. We all got to be at the table and using all the tools that we have available. And that's, I know the tools from a city side, and we had real challenges in Vancouver for many years that I was mayor. The Conservative federal government was not putting those tools on the table, was not investing in cities, particularly in Vancouver. Toronto was the second city to really be hit by affordability challenges. We need all the levels of government focused on this, working together and working with the private sector to build. The private sector can build. The nonprofit sector is proving they can deliver on more affordable and co-op housing. We got to have all of those pistons firing right now to deliver.
Right. Well, you mentioned Vancouver when you were mayor. That's really where the really kind of ground zero for the Canadian housing crisis in a lot of ways. That's where it began. And I know it's day one as Minister of Housing, but your record was under attack during the campaign. People point to the fact that development fees increased by 141% for a single family home when you were mayor, and the price of housing in East and West Vancouver basically doubled in round numbers. So how do you defend the appointment with that record to your critics?
Well, it's ridiculous to put that on the people of Vancouver or me as the mayor. This has happened across the country. This has happened around the world. If you look at cities around the world, this housing crisis, the shortage of housing, and the increase in prices, the increase in cost to build, is impacting everyone everywhere. So across Canada, we need to tackle this. Vancouver was the first hit, and that's where I say the challenges that we had with the Conservative federal government and the government in BC, who were both not frankly interested in investing in dealing with an affordable housing crunch as it was hitting. 2008, we had a global economic recession related to housing, obviously. That didn't help either. So we've had multiple challenges, and I think that what's different now is that we've got a prime minister and a new government here in Ottawa who are saying we need to double the rate of construction, we need to work across all levels of government, we need to engage the private sector to do this. We didn't have any of that going back to 2008. We had, we did everything we could do as a city in my 10 years as mayor. We were the first to have an empty homes tax. That's created thousands of units of housing, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for the city. We were the first to have rental-only zoning to protect some of the neighborhoods from condo development that was jacking up the real estate prices. We pulled everything we could together as a city government, but we didn't have enough support, frankly, from the federal and provincial government.
I mean, the national government got out of building affordable homes long before Stephen Harper was concerned.
Exactly.
It was the Liberal government that did it, right? I remember being in university, and my tuition would go up from September to January because of cuts to the provinces. So I get why supply was challenged there. How do you explain the increase in the development fees when you were there? Because I used to cover city council in St. John's, and they didn't want to raise the property tax because of people with fixed incomes. They didn't want them forced out of their homes. So they shifted it all to development charges as a way of just driving up the price for new home buyers because they weren't already voters and different things. Is that what happened in Vancouver? How do you explain that?
I wouldn't. It's not really what happened in Vancouver. I mean, the challenges with the city are, it's really cost recovery around the charges that the city levies, whether it's for business and development. With development cost charges in Vancouver, there's a cost recovery aspect that to invest in the infrastructure you need. The city has to make lots of improvements, all the costs related to new housing that have to go into place. The other piece of the puzzle there is, though, keeping taxes low is one thing. The housing market is driven by what people will pay for housing. So, when the development community is reaping large profits and the city is struggling to make the bottom line work, that there was some rebalancing there. We had community amenity charges as well in Vancouver, basically that were put in place before my time so that the public would benefit from the development.
Right.
When market housing is selling at those rates, we may as well take some of that back into the public purse, and the developers are making money. They made their profits, healthy profits for many years. Just got to make sure that the public sector, that our governments aren't giving everything away when the price is escalating because of what people will pay for that housing. So, and this is where the critical role of the federal government to make sure we're getting affordable housing built, supportive housing, co-op housing. We've got to make sure below market housing is being driven by the federal government, supported by local and provincial governments as well.
Well, this is the challenge, I guess, as a final point, is that cycle of development fees and different things. This is what has sort of led to the higher baseline price and the entry point of getting into the market. You want to increase the supply, but people have so much of their savings and their retirement, the home is their biggest asset, and that's what they're relying on. So how do you increase supply and make housing more affordable without ruining the retirement plans of people who have homes that they want to eventually cash out on? How do you thread that needle as minister?
Yeah, it's that is a challenging piece there, and that's where we're looking at several different aspects of the housing market. Market housing obviously is driven by market prices, and people that own housing or own buildings, they're riding on that market price. We have to make sure that we are building below market housing at a scale that makes sure we don't have people sleeping in the streets, that our young people can access the housing market. We've got new tools coming in terms of first-time home buyers not paying up to $1 million, getting $50,000 off. And that amount, if you're going up to $1.5 million in the more expensive markets. So we've got to create some incentives and opportunities for people to get into the market. We got to make sure that people's assets are obviously protected, and that's the market housing. But a big focus now on affordable housing and making sure there's entries into that, and the supply is keeping up with the demand.
Okay, and how quickly do you think Canadians will actually see change? Because this is the thing, we've been talking about housing for years now. The housing accelerator deals that Sean Fraser did, and your predecessors in this, it's just getting into the system, and maybe even not in some cases. So how quickly do you actually anticipate change happening?
Yeah, well, I think there is momentum now with the housing accelerator funding, and those partnerships with local governments and the investment in housing infrastructure and the water and the utilities, the cost of that, helping the local governments with that. It's going to take years. I mean, this is decades of building up a problem, so it's not going to be fixed overnight. Certainly, the
promise is to double home construction, though, right? By when? It's 2025. When do we double the pace of home construction?
That's our test. I think that's we've set a really high bar here to shoot for. We're counting on innovation and Canadian building technologies rising to this challenge, so we can build modular, we can build off-site manufacturing, we can use Canadian materials and accelerate. Build faster than our labor force right now is growing. So that's a tension as well, but we've got to make sure we're funding those Canadian companies, entrepreneurs, to get their technologies scaled up to market. That'll help us drive the pace as well. But it's a big challenge.
It's years away, we're talking.
We're
right?
years
Multiple
away,
years.
And we've got to put our shoulders to the wheel collectively.
Well, Gregor Robertson, thanks for coming in. Congratulations, new Minister of Housing and Infrastructure. No pressure, but I think every Canadian under 40 is counting on you. Good luck. Thank you, sir.
Including my kids.
All right. Thank you, sir. It's Gregor Robertson, the new Minister of Housing and Infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, gang, so what do you think? Do you think David Cochrane was trying to be a journalist there? Who do you think told him to hold back on the real questions? Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole mess we've got going on in the country. Gregor Robertson and our friend David Cochrane. Lord love a duck. Aaron Canadian Looney, thank you for watching. Gregor Robertson, almost on his own, destroyed Vancouver, and no one is asking him, why are you the housing minister under now? The reason is he wants for Canadians. Man, there is something very negative happening in our country. And currently the same government is in charge, but now they have a weasel rather than a rat in power. Like, Prime Minister Trudeau at least was stupid. He's not stupid. He's big difference. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe. We're going for 30,000 subscribers. Please smash that subscribe. Help me get there.